The following is the fourth episode of the Filip The Terran podcast, where I interview my friend Thomas Hall, who's a bioinformaticist. It's a very difficult word to say, but that's basically information technology mixed with genetics. So he investigates genetics at a very granular level using computer power, and it's a very interesting career to pursue, and it's something that, again, not a lot of people know about. But Thomas is really one of the most intelligent people I've ever met. He has a lot of very valuable opinions. We had a great conversation, partly about his research and also partly about politics. It just ended up being a capitalism versus socialism debate. But I do think it's quite a constructive debate, and I think he's got some interesting points. I have some interesting points, and I really highly recommend watching it, both for the biology and for the politics, right? I really don't think it's boring. I think it's very exhilarating, and I'm looking forward to what you think of the episode. I think it's very interesting. We'll probably interview him again. But thank you again for bearing with me on the intro, and I apologize sometimes when I really interrupt Thomas. I'll try to not do that again. I definitely take guilt for that. So again, thank you for watching the intro, and I hope you enjoyed the episode. Hello.
Hey, how's it going?
Very well. Nice to see you again after 2 years. Exactly 2 years?
Yeah, it's around that. Yeah, I mean, the last time was the computational symposium, which is happening. It happened like 2 weeks ago. So yeah, it's about then.
And how have the 2 years been?
It's been as good as you can imagine, I suppose.
Oh, really? Did you get married?
No, I didn't. I didn't get that. But I managed to get the doctorate finished during COVID, which, as anyone tell you, it was a bit of a challenge. But otherwise, it's okay. Been staying indoors for most of the time. How about you?
Last 2 years, I think fantastic. I feel like right now I'm kind of on an exponential function of happiness. So wow. I feel like I really feel like it's taken off. I really feel like a currently dream life, or very nearly dream life. So fantastic. A lot has happened. Obviously, with Tree Nation, we've been making incredible progress. I've a really awesome girlfriend, and she's coming to live with me in Barcelona. And I live in Barcelona. My LinkedIn might say Dublin, but actually I live in Barcelona now. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot more, but I think this is it's good for now. We can talk about all the other details, any other time. So for the listeners, who are not in on our little personal relationship here, tell us about yourself. Tell us who you are, what do you do, why do you do it?
Okay, well, hi, I'm Tom. I'm a postgraduate researcher in University College Dublin. My PhD is in computational infection biology. So I'm a computational biologist, and what I'm interested in is the relationship between a host and the pathogen that's infecting it. And my specialization is the host response to mycobacterial species. So these are the causative pathogens of tuberculosis, either in cattle, which is bovine tuberculosis, or humans, which is just normal tuberculosis. So I study a lot. Essentially, what my work revolves around is we use technology to essentially take a snapshot of the cell when it's infected. The cells that I look at are these things called macrophages, which are immune cells, very powerful ones. And using those snapshots, I can generate results, usually in the area of what we call systems biology, which is, instead of looking at one or two genes, we look at all genes as a system and try to work out what systems are employed to fight the disease. And working out those systems, we can then work out what's important to those systems, and perhaps improve not only animal resistance to disease, which is my primary area of research, making disease-resistant animals, increasing animal happiness and welfare, but also potentially discovering targets for human therapy, because how cows respond to bovine tuberculosis is very similar how we respond to human tuberculosis. And yeah, that's essentially it. We can get into more detail later, I suppose, but that's the crux of it.
Sounds incredible. My God, we can discover a lot of things about just actually digging into this and seeing how people react, I mean, with a non-scientific background, it would be really fascinating to see. Yeah, because it's really cool to have somebody that has such a esoteric understanding of something so important and have that kind of explained on a podcast like here. So maybe it will take a while, but I think we should dig through it, and I would love to understand it. I think it's a really, really big deal. But I think before we go into science, I'd be very interested in why. So why is it that you went down this path in the first place? And let's start really early. So I'm interested to know maybe a bit of your little backstory of why did you end up going into science, and how, or biology specifically, and how did that lead you to studying tuberculosis that you do today, like you do today?
The actually getting into biology was my father. So he's a lawyer, and I realized that I definitely didn't want to do that after watching him do it.
Why? Why?
I'm
interested.
We can get that into that later, but frankly, it's just it just wasn't my cup of tea, put it that way. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I was very into art, video games, lots of different things. I liked science as well, particularly biology. But as I finished my leaving cert, the summer of finishing my leaving cert, for the listeners, that's my final year in secondary school in Ireland. We had a big trip planned, he and I, to Peru. And we hiked to Machu Picchu, and we also went to the Amazon. And part of that trip was to try and work out what I want to do and where I want to do it. And we were sitting in one of the huts in the middle of the Amazon one evening, and he said that I should do zoology. And I was wondering, why is that? And he said that, you know, I was maybe 17 at the time, that when we entered the sort of compound that we were staying in the middle of the jungle, there was a foot tarantula just to the left of the path, quite toxic, venomous, sorry, and beautiful creature. You know, you could see it just kind of outside its hut at the time. And what happened was everybody kind of veered right around the foot tarantula. But instead of that, not only did I kind of investigate it, but then anytime anyone new came to the compound, I would take them to see the foot tarantula, because I just thought it was so interesting and everybody else should see it. So he just said that if you take that kind of enthusiasm into the sciences and study animals, I think it would be really good for you. And he was right about going into the sciences. He was unfortunately wrong about zoology. I did a few modules in it, and I realized that it wasn't for me.
Why?
Honestly, I don't know. I felt that I love animals very much, but I love them from, I think, a position of not studying them and just enjoying the biology as it is, rather than having all these stats and quantification that comes around zoology and studying it and doing it for a living. I think also, like, I'm much more interested in entomology, the study of insects. You can't see it, but behind that blue canister there is a ant farm. I have been growing now for the past 6 months.
Very nice.
So I love that, but it's more of a hobby. But as I was doing my degree in UCC, which is University College Cork, I realized that actually I don't like the macrobiology, I like the microbiology. And I went into microbiology, particularly in UCC. It's the area of studying bacteria. That's the main focus.
And then I got sorry, Tom, and for the audience, what is the difference between micro and macrobiology? Because the audience probably won't know.
Oh, sure. Sorry. So essentially the easy way to put it is, what can you see with your eye? We can't really see bacteria, even harder time seeing viruses. There is one bacteria you can see with your eye, green sulfur bacteria, I think it's called. But other than that, they're invisible to us. Whereas macrobiology, you can see an elephant pretty far away. So that's a very quick and dirty way of separating the two. And then I like computers and IT. The setup here I have now is something I've built from scratch, and I just wanted to combine microbiology with computer science and what that field is called bioinformatics. So that's the use of computer science. A very quick and easy way I can explain bioinformatics is, and you know this, sure, I think I taught you this, is that in biology we have what's called wet lab and dry lab. So wet lab is all the people you see in photos with the lab coats and the test tubes, and it's very much like that. But dry lab is that kind of experimentation, that study, but on computers. And why that's important is, let's say, Philip, you're an expert in bulldozers, hypothetically.
Yes,
you know
I
how
am.
much
Realistically also.
Yeah, of course I can tell, you know. So I give you an Excel sheet, and you know how bulldozers generally sell for. So I say, Philip, I have this Excel sheet. There's 10 bulldozers and 5 features. So 10 in rows, 5 in columns.
Nice.
And I ask you, can you work out what these 10 bulldozers will sell for? So in the columns, you see what engine it is, what year they were made, etc. You look at these 10, and you know a lot about bulldozers, so you work out exactly how much it costs for. So I say, great job, Philip. Here is a Excel file with 50,000 bulldozers and 150 columns. Many of the data points are incorrectly listed. So some have, you know, the year it was made was color red, stuff like that. And I ask you to do the same thing. You can't do that with your eyes. You can't do that in a human way. So just replace that with genes and biological samples, and it's essentially identical. So that's what bioinformatics is. It's the application of computer science to these big, huge data sets that we can't work out in a normal human way. And yeah, that's what I did for my master's. And then I went to work in Tagus, which is an Irish research center, usually focusing in agriculture and microbiology. And then the place I was working in had 1,700 cattle. And I was working on bovine genomics, and I fell in love with the work. I fell in love with animal welfare and science geared towards, you know, just making their lives easier from an agricultural perspective. And here I am 6 years later, still doing it, and I don't have any plans to change. So yeah, that's me.
Well, extremely interesting career path. I think one I think that not many people even know about. That you know that there's this wet lab, dry lab part of biology. Personally, you know, I've done obviously science in UCD. I absolutely hated wet labs, and I still do, and I hated them in secondary school. I always hated them, and that's what really pushed me away from science. I'm just the worst person possible for a wet lab. But dry labs, I think are very interesting, right? I think dry labs, you know, personally, it's something that nobody, I think, imagines that is like what a biologist may do, right? Do you agree with that? Like, do you get, when people think, do you tell people that you're a biologist? Like, how do you explain to your layperson exactly like what it is that you do, and what kind of assumptions do they come up with?
So, I mean, usually I use the bulldozer technique that usually clicks for non-scientific people. I usually have to explain it a little bit. Yeah, no, I was told that by a friend of mine. But usually I have to explain a bit more to other scientists. So scientists that haven't encountered this before. And even in biology, you do encounter that sometimes. And I think there definitely is sometimes a perception that it's not real experimentation, or it may be a bit less so than the experimental side. The truth is that I think it's probably a harder job to do wet lab. It's definitely, without question, more physically demanding, and it can be more cerebrally demanding as well. But one thing that I think both sides now can't dispute is that one now needs the other. And that's simply because we're producing so much data now. You know, terabytes upon terabytes upon terabytes. It's no longer, you know, kilobytes of data. So the wet side understands that you can't interpret the results without the dry side, and the dry side understands that you can't get results without the wet lab people generating the data. So it's I don't have to explain myself as much anymore. It's kind of evening out a little bit.
I see. So now I think this is a really important question for a lot of the listeners that might not have a scientific background, right? I think this is, frankly, considering what's happening today with, you know, vaccines and the outrage around it, and all these negative remarks going towards science, what I would like you to explain to the audience is basically where we are at in terms of understanding the data sets. And when you refer to the data sets, you're referring to genetics, right? So can you explain where we are at in terms of how much data there is, how much data we understand, and what are we doing to make progress? Because before I let you speak, I want to speak to the audience, is that science, what I love about science, right? I'm very, very supportive of science, is the fact that you can be wrong within science. And the point is that you can always be wrong about science, because science is just hard. The universe is hard. It's super complicated and super difficult to understand. But people like Tom are doing their best. So tell me, Tom, how far along are we on the general project of understanding everything?
Oh wow, that's a big question. So first of all, very kind, and I completely agree with your testament there that it is all very, very, very complicated. So I will focus purely on the gene side of things. In terms of how much data we have, enormous amounts of data. It's difficult even to sort of comprehend, but exabytes upon exabytes upon exabytes. You know, it's huge, because even taking one, like I said, one of those snapshots. So, you know, a time point when cells are infected. Let's say they've been infected for 24 hours. We take a snapshot of those cells. That will produce, depending on how many samples you have, terabytes of data. That's one experimental condition at one time point for one experiment. And there are literally hundreds of thousands, if not millions of experiments. So it's a lot. In terms of where we are at understanding it, not very far. We have tons to go. And I speak purely from the position of a systems biologist. You can take an individual gene and you can study it quite well in terms of what that gene does. And a good way that we do that is we take the mouse model, which is very similar, obviously, to humans, or the fruit fly. And we knock out one of those genes, and then we see what effect it has on the organism. So that's a good way of doing it one by one. But from a systems biology perspective, all of these genes working in tandem.
Exactly.
We have a long way to go to understanding it generally, and even further to go to understanding it individually. And this is especially pertinent when it comes to the mutations that an individual has in a given gene. You and I have different mutations, not a lot, but that's why we look different. That's sometimes how we act different or sound different. And those mutations can have huge downstream effects. This is what we call the notion of pleiotropism, where one gene can have many different roles at different times. It's not just one gene for one thing. And this is especially important when it comes to immunology. So understanding what a gene does and understanding what a gene does for an individual, we've got so far to go. Long way.
And I want to say why, because I recently learned something in mathematics. I use Brilliant, just to kind of upskill myself. I don't know if you know Brilliant. It's a great app. It's for studying STEM. Like it's an app that all you do is solve problems. You don't watch any videos. You just solve problems. And I learned something about permutations, which blew my mind completely blew my mind, right? And it was an example. And if anybody here knows about, I highly recommend you download it. And then if you start doing computer science fundamentals, you'll run into this problem. And it's basically, it starts off with a bridge in Königsberg. Did you ever hear of this? Do you know what Königsberg is?
Is this the traveling salesman problem? It has to crossing the bridges without going.
Yes. How many combinations there are? So anyway, so you get it, but let me explain it, right? So for the audience, so basically, when you have just 7 bridges, right, and this is a real place, Königsberg, it's very close to Poland, actually. The question is, how many can you cross all the bridges without crossing one twice, right? And then basically it asks you how many combinations in terms of which bridge you cross first can you do, right? And just to show you all of the possible kind of permutations or all the possible ways to solve the problem. And this is for like 7 bridges. And then they take it to another example, which is like a city in the US, which has something like 473 bridges. And they basically show you, if you were to illustrate basically through, what is it called in computer science? Brute force, when you try to solve a problem by just like trial and error, like trial and erroring basically every single combination. If you were to do a trial and error experiment over those bridges in America, when you have 473 bridges, every single combination of ways you could cross all those bridges, you would have like more combinations than there's atoms in the universe. And this is just 473 bridges, right? So when it comes to the genes, how many genes are there in like one human being?
Oh, human being between 22 and 25,000, I think. I don't work with humans, but in humans that much. In the bovine genome, there's 30,574 genomic features. So that includes genes, microRNAs, lots of different bits and pieces.
So you would need something like a couple of thousands of universes and have basically all of those atoms. That's how many combinations there could be of genes. And the reason why this is important, right, is because genes have different relationships with each other, as you just said, right? So the point is that using brute force and testing out, basically doing an experiment and changing a gene basically per experiment, we would have to do more experiments to understand the whole genome than there is atoms in the universe. Is that correct? Using brute force?
Using brute force, that might be correct, but luckily we don't have to do that because what we can do is basically contextualize the genomic function. So let's take a gene, tumor necrosis factor. You can test its combination, and I've done studies like this where you see how it works with every other gene in every sort of combination. We're talking about trillions and trillions and trillions of comparisons. But because we know a lot about this gene, we kind of know what things it's going to be involved with and what genes it may interact with based on its biological function. So you can actually rule out a lot of those hypothetical combinations because we know it won't work with genes that say that are olfactory or nose genes. I mean, someone might correct me there, but as far as I know, that's not the case. So our biological context and understanding that we're constantly building on starts to narrow the playing field, and we were able to infer combinations and functions a lot easier than we used to. And like I say, it's something that we build up. And as you said very astutely, in science, and some of the people in the public don't seem to think this, but in science, we are very much open to being wrong. That is part of it. And that's the world of genetics is very much works like that, where we might have a particular function for a gene. It might be part of a family, but new experiments come out, new data comes out, and we realize that that combination doesn't quite work. But actually, this combination makes a lot more sense. So you can brute force it, but we're kind of getting closer to the place where we might not actually have to do that anymore.
Okay, big kind of potential tangent, but super interesting. What do you think about adding quantum computers into bioinformatics? I'm super interested.
I mean, yeah.
Would it help?
Yeah, I'm sure it would. I can't possibly conceive about the advancements quantum computing could make, particularly to prediction of protein function, even though we've had a huge breakthrough with that recently, about brute forcing some of these combinations, the application of machine learning and on high dimensional data, which we're already doing, but having essentially limitless computer resources would make that a lot faster and a lot better. So yeah, I mean, it's going to be enormous, whatever application it has. It's just got to turn up. It's I was hearing about quantum computing, showing my age now, but about 28 years ago. So, it's when it turns up, I'll be able to answer that question a bit better. What I'm seeing some really good advancement in is, this might be a bit boring for your audience now, but it's kind of a breakaway from CPU-based computing and GPU, graphics cards based computing. There's been a lot of movement in biology from one to the other, particularly with the application of machine learning. And yeah, it's really cool. There's some really good stuff going on there, which is a problem because we can't buy any GPUs at the moment. But we'll get past that one day, hopefully.
Yeah. And okay, so let's go specific now. Let's talk about your research. So tuberculosis. Why tuberculosis? Did you pick it? Did somebody pick it for you? What was your kind of journey within, let's say, college level science that brought you to tuberculosis?
Well, I think like any PhD student, I had done certain things that contribute to a CV where a project research manager kind of looks at it and says, okay, he's done this, this, and this, or she's done this, this, and this, and they would be suitable for this project. So my supervisors, Professor David McHugh and Stephen Gordon, who are excellent, brilliant to work with, never a problem in 6 years. They had this huge grant to study the post-pathogen interaction in tuberculosis. I was working with an old colleague of theirs on bovine immunology, and he sent over my recommendation. I went in for an interview and I got it. And it's just working in microbiology, working in bovine immunology. All of these things kind of contribute to getting the PhD. And that is the case with pretty much every student. They'll have something in their pocket that makes them more suitable than perhaps other people. That's not to say that every PhD student knows everything going in. In fact, that is utterly the opposite. I can guarantee you that you probably know nothing going in. But it's the aptitude that they're looking for. And yeah, that's why I'm here. And it's super interesting. Tuberculosis is, I get this sometimes from my family, you know, didn't we cure tuberculosis, you know, 100 years ago or something like that? So 2018, tuberculosis killed approximately 1.8 million people.
Whoa! What? Maybe I have a very little point of reflection. How I just came out of my head. I have very little to relate this to. I don't know all the numbers. How does that relate to the other numbers?
It's at the time it was the 10th leading cause of death, I believe, in 2018. That's all deaths: cancer, car crashes, whatever. Wow. So yeah, it's obviously not nearly as devastating as COVID is at the moment, but tuberculosis is and shall continue to be a major killer worldwide. The reason that people don't know about it is that it's quite specific to developing countries. So that's a common problem, that if it's not, you know, infecting rich Western societies, it tends to get ignored. But yeah, it's devastating. And if you want, I can tell you a bit of a horror story about it.
Yes, please.
So this relates to, I suppose, something that's happened recently. So obviously we're all aware that the Omicron variant has emerged, and there's, I haven't looked at this now in a couple of days, but there's hypotheses of where it came from. And one of these is that it may have come from an AIDS patient, maybe one. And the issue there is that because people with AIDS have an inability to clear a disease, COVID was sustaining itself in this individual and essentially evolved to a point that it was vaccine evasive. This is not dissimilar to how tuberculosis works. Tuberculosis evolves to quite quickly to evade our antibiotics, which we've been using heavily to treat it for decades and decades since we've really had them. And what we're starting to see now is MDR and XDR strains, which are multi-drug resistant or extensively drug resistant. And we are coming close to a point where you or I, both in Western societies, may start coughing and feeling quite poorly, go to a doctor, get diagnosed with tuberculosis, and told that it's a totally drug-resistant strain, which means we will die. There's no treatment. There's nothing that can be done. It will be just as it was, you know, centuries ago, where you get the quote consumption, and your days are numbered. And we are heading into that. You know, brute forcing it. I suppose we're heading into this potentially very scary future. So,
and can I ask questions? I know you were telling the story, but I think I'll forget some things. So, in terms of the immunity of tuberculosis, is this related in anyhow to the fact that we were trying to treat it with things? Like, is that what is the real mechanics behind this? Like, why is it getting to this point? Maybe you were going to say that, but I just wanted to ask in case.
Of course, no. So if you can imagine our evolution, our generational step is 20 to 30 years. I don't know what the average is, but that's when we have a kid. So that's the next step in evolution is our offspring. But their generation time is much, much faster. They're quite slow in general, but I should know off the top of my head what it is now, but it's a couple of weeks. So they have a much quicker rate of evolution, and evolution is always driven by the environment. And if you can imagine, if its environment is constantly being if they're constantly being exposed to an antibiotic and killed off by it, very quickly they'll start to replicate to a point where they're actually able to get past their environment. And if that one who's evolved that resistance is now totally resistant to the antibiotic, that single bacteria now becomes the entire population in an individual, in a niche, in an environment, etc. So, and that can happen very, very quickly. So going back to AIDS patients, they unfortunately will have to be constantly treated with antibiotics because they can't shed the disease themselves. They can't get rid of it. So that gives them this environment where they can evolve consistently to resist the antibiotic. And as a result, that then very resistant strain of the bacteria can be spread to other people, because tuberculosis is incredibly infectious. It's only a single bacteria that can actually cause you to get tuberculosis. So unlike COVID, you need quite a large viral load. With tuberculosis, it's a single one. So yeah, that's where we're getting. That's how we're getting to this place. That's quite scary.
So basically, exactly what I suspected. So the fact that we are we're kind of overusing antibiotics, although it's not really fair to say overusing.
No, we are definitely
overusing.
So with the AIDS patients, there's nothing that you can do. They should get all the treatment that they can. But we overuse antibiotics everywhere, and no more do we use antibiotics than in agriculture. We just pump domestic animals with them. So yes, in general, even just not just tuberculosis, we are completely overusing antibiotics, and it's going to be a major global threat if it continues as it is. And the one of the large issues with that is most pharmaceutical companies don't want to research a new antibiotic because A, it costs a lot of money, B, it might not they might not see any results from it. The antibiotic that they synthesize might not be effective, and C, they can't use it until the current line is now ineffective. And I suppose D, eventually that antibiotic will also become obsolete. So nobody wants to do it because it's just a huge money sink. So yeah, we're kind of stagnating in this at the moment.
Wow. To give me a more, this is, my God, this is a scary topic, and it's so important. And I want to get my thoughts together. So this is from this you can go on to so many tangents about our system and what is wrong about it, right? But this information that you're telling me with the threat of antibiotics, I've been told this in secondary school, right? So I've known about this for a long time. A lot of people have known about this, but the fact that we don't have a body that exists in our system externally to capitalism, and look, capitalism is amazing, but it really is very high risk when you don't have a reliable referee, or something that is kind of like a security level, which takes care of problems where exactly what you just explained, where it's not really cost effective to do it, but nobody really seems to be doing it. What do you think? As world emperor, if let's say that you become world emperor, how would you solve it? But you still have to work with the systems that we have right now.
Well, as world emperor, I would annihilate capitalism and introduce democratic socialism worldwide, because that would fix the problem. Because your referees are, for the most part, corrupt under a capitalist state, I feel.
Yes, sorry, but can I give a point of information on that? Right. So, lobbying is my biggest problem with the world. It really is, and it's the source of the problems that we have in terms of the vaccine campaign, etc. In reality, in my opinion, and that's a very complicated subject, but let's not go on that tangent right now. But lobbying is I hate lobbying. Lobbying is a really, really big problem. But why? Because capitalism has one serious problem, do you want to kind of take? It's like your app has a bug, so you kind of you uninstall your app. Would you not just fix the bug, or is it impossible in your eyes?
Well, that runs under the assumption that capitalism contains one bug. It doesn't.
Of course, it contains loads. I agree. Yeah.
And I think I should say that there are varying degrees of capitalism. Ireland is a capitalist state, but it's a capitalism that I can almost stomach. Whereas you look at America and it's capitalism just gone completely awry. So I mean, if it would work, I like it. But capitalism runs. We're going completely off tangent here, but
but it's fun. Continue.
Yeah, no, yeah. So I should say that one of my I don't watch reality TV, but my reality TV is American politics because it's fascinating. It's such. Can I swear on this podcast?
Of course, you fucking can.
Yeah, great. It's absolute shit show. It's a complete shit show. It's fascinating from that perspective. I'm very sad, unfortunately. So capitalism runs under this premise that everybody has equal opportunity, but that's just categorically incorrect. And there are just so many examples of that. So I don't think that it's I think that capitalism, if we're talking about a bug and fixing it, it's like the Final Fantasy 14 or 15, 14 I think, was an online game that when it was released, it was so terrible, they just completely dismantled it and rebuilt it from scratch. And now it's excellent. I think we're kind of in the same place with capitalism where it's so broken now, particularly in some parts of the world, that I don't think that you can fix all of the bugs and maintain a healthy and happy populace. And I think COVID and the pandemic has made that, to me, crystal clear. Because I was very pro-capitalism. I was very, socialist leaning, definitely leftist. But over the past, not only 2 years, but maybe 3 or 4, the emergence of people like Bezos and Musk and all that has shown me that the system simply doesn't work. And bringing us back to fixing the antibiotic issue, you can fix this problem with antibiotics and make less money, or you cannot fix it and continue to make money. And I think under strict capitalist regime, it's always going to be the latter. It's always going to be making money.
So I have a couple of points of information. Let me just run through them. First of all, on the final one where you said that, you kind of, it seems that you came to your conclusion, right? So that is, with capitalism, you will never be able to get around this. All I would say, maybe not. And then
Sure.
to come back to the first thing that you said, which was very interesting, is actually a very philosophical debate about equal opportunity. And we can talk about, because this is so interesting, and this is something I've thought about at length myself. I can't say that I have a conclusion, because it's really a subjective and philosophical argument, which is like, okay, you're saying everyone should have equal opportunity, right? But you're not taking into account the fact that you can think of an individual as an individual, or you can think of an individual as the child of their parents. And if the parents decide, right, that they would like to basically transfer the work that they've done in their life and put that onto their children and give them unfair advantages within capitalism, if you come in with a stance that everyone should have equal opportunity, you're kind of against that, right? So in my opinion, like I would say my number one value, actually recently was just posting about this, I really think my number one value is freedom, quickly followed by personal responsibility, because you need both of them. But I think that if you as a parent, you have like 2 million and you want to set up your child and give them unfair opportunity, unfair advantages, I think that should be allowed, in my opinion. Do you disagree with this?
Well, it's sort of a disparate premise. I don't have any problem with people accruing wealth and using that wealth to give their child all the possible advantages and opportunity. What I disagree with is that wealth can do that, and that the system that wealth is being implemented in is already stacked against other people of that society. I can give you an example.
Okay.
I will be referencing a lot towards America just because that's what I know better, kind of embarrassingly more than I know Irish politics. So what is if I can ask you a question, what is the best way, or one of the best methods of accruing wealth in America?
Maybe real estate, maybe stock investing, maybe hedge funds.
It includes all of those. It's inheritance. Inheritance
Oh, well,
is
that's
where
yeah, trick question. Huh?
well, to an extent, but that's
Yeah.
I should maybe have rephrased that and said what is the greatest source of individual wealth. So if we just take that alone, and you make a good point that people can use their wealth to help their children and give them the best possible opportunity. What you have is a lot of people that have had centuries of inheritance because they've owned land for centuries. But the African American population of America have only been able to own land for a few generations, and even then, there were Jim Crow laws to prevent the acquisition of land by African American families. So their level of inheritance is absolutely nowhere close to white families.
For sure.
That was
Agreed.
for a long time on purpose. So when you
It's
say,
it's very racist. Anyway, continue.
I mean, yeah, absolutely. So when you say that let's not have a problem about families giving their money to children to give them the best opportunity. In theory, I don't disagree with that. It's just I wish that all families had an equal opportunity to do this, but that simply is not the case, and it's based on a cultural construct, which is race, because race doesn't really exist in biology. It absolutely exists in society, and that's why I think from that just that one, there's so many more, but just from that position,
yeah, I want to talk about all of them.
Well, yeah,
continue.
So yeah, it's not an even playing field, and it's designed to be that way, and it is honestly only getting worse. The emergence of the ultra billionaires is, to me, disgusting. I cannot stand any of them. I think probably the only one that I have any support for is Jeff Bezos.
Bill Gates? Oh, Jeff Bezos. Okay.
Not Bill Gates. Definitely not, and absolutely not Jeff Bezos. Jeff Bezos' ex-wife, and Andrew Mackenzie. I can't remember her name.
Yeah, the one that's giving loads of money to charity.
Who is giving more money? She can't give it away quick enough. She's making so much. Her philanthropic efforts are admirable. They're not perfect, but she seems to be one of the few that is actually trying her best to give her money away to improve the world around her. That is absolutely not the case with any of the rest of them. Bill Gates.
Point of information. I have a very strong point of information against that. Very, very strong. I don't know if you're aware of this. Do you know of the gift and pledge?
Yeah, I do. But let's see that happen.
You think it's bullcrap?
So what is it? 99% of their wealth, Mark Zuckerberg, Warren Buffett.
Warren Buffett and Bill Gates started it, and there's a couple of hundred people on it. If there was an execution of one of these, I don't know if these are like legal agreements or whatever, whether there was an actual execution that happened, I don't know. But if it did, does it change your mind?
No, and I can tell you why. So first of all, I don't think it'll happen. But even if it does, I wasn't going to talk about this today, but I suppose we got there. So I think if you become a billionaire, you're pretty much morally bankrupt. I know that's a harsh position to take, but I think if you allow your wealth to accrue to a point where you are sitting on billions upon billions and billions of dollars, something...
But they're not sitting on them.
Well, they are. I know it's not liquid. I understand.
Yeah.
But they have the ability to liquefy it without damaging their sort of asset generation. I think that you should get to 999 million, and you get a sticker that says "Well done, you won
life."
And now everything else is given to people who need it. So it doesn't. If they do end up giving all of their money away, and again, I don't think they will. It doesn't absolve them of all of the damage they've done by not giving it away in the first place. And a very easy example.
Okay, do you want to?
I'll give you this one example. So, Adrian Hill, who I've met before, was a pivotal team member in creating the AstraZeneca vaccine, and at Oxford, and you may have heard this, but they wanted to make the formula and the manufacturing process for that vaccine open source, and it was Bill Gates that stepped in and said that there is an equilibrium of intellectual property. We shouldn't upset that equilibrium, and you should monetize it. And it was sold to AstraZeneca. I don't care if Bill Gates.
That's a bad one.
I don't care if Bill Gates gives every cent of his money away tomorrow, which he's never going to do. It doesn't absolve him from, and this is just one thing, it doesn't absolve him from that thing. And doesn't matter how much they give away. It doesn't absolve them from what damage they've caused by keeping that money. Anyway, that's it.
I have a very strong point of information against that.
Yeah,
I think this thing about Bill Gates is crazy. Holy crap! Like, again, I don't know. It's very hard, you know, to just take what people like. Obviously, I trust you, but it's just everybody tells me so many things. You know, it's very difficult it's too much information to even take it. You know, but very interesting. But I have a very strong point of information against that. So I want to talk about Warren Buffett. Do you know Warren Buffett?
Yeah, I know him a bit. Yeah, I probably know him less than the others.
Yeah, so Warren Buffett is an investor. He's been an investor since I think like the 40s or the 50s. He's a very old guy. He's in his 90s. He's like, if you watch interviews with him or you talk to him, he really comes off, at least. You can always say anybody's evil behind closed doors, but I don't think that means anything. He definitely comes off as like the nicest, sweetest person ever, who's very good at business and cares a lot about other people. And this is back when he was around 20 or 30, that him and his wife created a strategy where it's like, okay, Warren Buffett said, I believe, though, I'm so good at this investing stuff, I'm so good at this business stuff, and he's really is one of a kind, that I believe that by the end of my life, if I invest, if I work at Berkshire Hathaway and I grow my wealth, I will be able to accumulate X amount of money. I don't think he ever predicted to make as much money as he actually did, because he has nearly 100 billion. But then the plan that him and his wife made, where it's like, when we finish, we want to pick 5 charities to give it away to. And actually one of them is Bill Gates Foundation, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, whatever you may think of that. And basically, the argument,
it's good.
The argument is that you are saying it's like, oh, it doesn't absolve them because they should have given away the money first. But there's a couple of problems with that. One, is it so easy to just give money away and solve a problem? I would question that. And two, what if Warren Buffett can give 100 billion in 40 years if he doesn't give anything away originally, or he could give away 2 million 40 years earlier? So I think he, according to your argument, he could even be like more morally wrong if he doesn't make the money, because if he knows he can make the money, he can help more in the future. What do you think about that?
No, I see what you mean. So the fact that he didn't give any money away now means that he was able to use that money to accrue more wealth and thus give more later. That's a reasonable point, and I might eat my hat on that one. I'll address your first point first. How easy is it to give away that money? How easy was it to make it? Like, how much of Gary Vee's time has he spent making this money? Could he not? Yeah, I mean, it's Gary Vee, of course he has. You know, surely that amount of effort and drive can be, if you can help the world, if you have enough money as Bezos does to end world hunger how many times over, could you not start investing your time and energy towards giving your money away, even to like a similar or half the effort that you did making it? So it's not very easy, but you have a responsibility as one of the richest people in the world.
Do you? This is a big question. This is the question of questions. We can get
you do, as long as you're not morally bankrupt. And this brings us into the second point, which is, okay, maybe they could use their money to accrue wealth so they could give more later. Well, that means that we have to trust that they will do that. Have they done anything to garner that trust from us? I mean, Musk, who I probably have the most issue with, has given less than 0.1% of his wealth away. How are we to trust that he will give 99% of it? Warren Buffett, who has given, I think, 5 billion, something like that. I mean, he's worth much, much more than that, but he's at least given more away of it. Warren Buffett is at the twilight of his life, and I don't see much motivation for him to actually disseminate his wealth. I haven't seen dissemination of 99% of any billionaire's wealth. So we're just to trust these people that, hey, they're going to save us at the end of the day. Look, you're in conservation. You're in climate change. They could save us now. This is the time to do it. We are literally heading into the end of the world era, and they're using their money to make more wealth. So no, it doesn't absolve them. I think they'll keep it, and they'll continue to keep it, and they'll die with it. That's what they've told us. That's what they've shown us they will do.
You created, like, when you were saying this, you created like point of information number 1, point of information number 2, point of information number 3. I can't even do all of them, but there's one I really want to discuss, and this is we're now in philosophy. So why is it that you believe that it's the responsibility of Jeff Bezos to help anybody? Why? Why if he only lives for himself? And you're a biologist. You're a biologist, and you know how evolution works. In evolution, we are a species where every individual prioritizes themselves. Don't you think so? Oh, you disagree?
No, that's wrong.
Okay.
Sorry, that is categorically incorrect. We only got here because of cooperation, and our social structure is based entirely on empathy and helping those that are weaker than us. That's how we got here. That's how all of this exists.
Okay, so how about Spain colonizing Southern America? Or how about humans that killed off Neanderthals? How about we have been at war forever, fighting each other? You don't put any value on that? I'm not saying this is good, and I'm not saying I'm happy about it. I'm just putting information out there,
So competition for resources is obviously a part of our evolution as well, but we are outside our revolution now, and the Conquistador campaign does not justify Jeff Bezos not spending any money on climate change. His incentive.
But this, I'm not justifying. I'm just okay. Sorry, I'll let you.
But yeah, I mean, I don't think one informs the other. And I should say that Jeff Bezos's incentive for being a good person and saving the Earth, well, first, being a good person. Second, he is on this planet. This planet is the planet that his children will occupy. I think there is an enormous incentive for him to try and use his money to save it. He is looking inwardly only. And I think he needs to start looking outwardly if anyone but himself, let alone his own family. So yes, I think he and every other billionaire, white male billionaire, well, no, it's not just them, but every billionaire has a huge incentive, if not just self-preservation, to save the planet that we are on. And our evolution and the horrors of the past do not absolve them from serving only themselves.
Okay, and this will be very interesting. Okay, so in my opinion, Tesla is literally solving climate change more than anybody else. And maybe I'm wrong. I'm very open to being wrong, and I would like to hear why you disagree with that. I have a very deep understanding of Tesla and what they're doing, and I believe Tesla is miles ahead of any charity, of any other company, or any goddamn government in solving climate change. Miles ahead. So can you tell me why I'm wrong?
I'm not saying you are. I don't have a problem with the Tesla. Tesla, and I don't know what the metrics are. You may very well be right that the contribution that Tesla is making with electric cars to fighting climate change might outweigh anything else. That may be true. I honestly don't know.
Not just electric cars. Electric cars are just the beginning.
Yeah, but honestly, I don't have a single problem with that. And if that is Musk's direction for it, if it was his sole direction for it, then hats off, great. I'll say a few things about that, though. One, that's not his priority. His priority is making money, and that is that.
How do you know that? How do you know that?
Because, okay, oh gosh. First, let me finish my previous point.
Okay.
About my non-issue with Tesla. Tesla is full of amazing scientists, engineers, employees, the best in the business. And I know that is one of their major incentives is saving the planet that they're on. It is telling that the technological and innovative contributions to the vehicles and the technology that they've developed has had little to no input from from Musk. He may have directed them, which is great. hats off to him. That's a great idea. But he's not this genius that's inventing this. He's made almost no contribution.
I know this. I wouldn't say no contribution, but I would say...
Well, I was going to say that one of his contributions is making his charging point monetary, because his charging point for his Tesla cars are not compatible with other electric cars. That's correct, right?
No, but this is exactly... He's doing the opposite of what you're saying. So what they're doing is they're on their way to making it available for every car. And this is not a conspiracy. This is public news. So it's the other way.
If that is the case, then I have no problem with that. That sounds great. In terms of Musk's incentive to make money, oh God, it's endless. So obviously he doesn't want unionization. He pays his employees. He says that he pays them a lot, but he's actually not paying them in comparison to other companies a competitive wage.
Point of information.
I gotta finish this. His safety standards for his employees have only now just come up to the basic level of standard, even though that he said basically he's full of all of these lovely sentences and comments about how great everybody is, how great his company is. For instance, if his employees make a mistake, he will then go down to the factory floor, make that same mistake, and see how he can change it. That's happened once ever, and it was a publicity stunt. His tweets about Dogecoin is all about manipulating the cryptocurrency market to try and increase his own wealth. There's a great interview where he's talking about he's giving an interview about setting up this new factory. He's asked by the audience how much of the water in the current area will be consumed. He starts laughing at that person asking him that question, goes, it's fucking Germany, it rains. Like, he doesn't really care about people. Like, he's talking about going to space, like he's trying to invade the fucking planet. He doesn't really care about you or anybody else. He cares about making that money. Now, if that eventually contributes to this huge incentive and change in the global technological market, where we are now able to combat climate change using Musk's technology and company, then I will happily eat my hat and say, okay, he's done a great thing. I still think he's morally bankrupt because he's a billionaire. I'll never get past that. But great, that's a good start. But if he was truly invested in fighting climate change, he would also donate money, not even climate change, but helping the world. He would donate money as well as make innovations in his own company. Remember that recent tweet where he said that if you'd show me how you would spend my money, I will give you money to solve world hunger. That was from the UN. Like, think about that from your perspective, Filip. I know you're a nice guy, so just think about.
I'm lovely.
If you have, yeah, well, you are. That's why I came on. If you have over 100 billion or whatever he has, why would you make you solving world hunger conditional? Just give them the fucking money, even if half of it is spent erroneously. At least you gave 2 billion to fixing world hunger. Why would you make a big public show about it being conditional, and then, I should say, not actually give the money when they met with him anyway? Anyway, I'm sure you got lots of points of information. I'm done.
No, I think, first of all, Tom, I really enjoy and respect your opinion, right? And
yours too, of course.
Yeah, although I am an Elon, I am a big Elon fan. I'm also an Elon critic. So
Sure.
I have my own views. There does exist actually two cults. You have the anti-Elon cult where everyone just hates him for everything, and then you have the pro-Elon cult. Well, literally grown-ass men are genuinely in love with him, like really in love with him. And I
Sure.
know, yeah, it's crazy. You can watch him on
Elon
YouTube,
Andes.
you know?
Yeah.
you can go on YouTube. But you made loads of points, and there's a couple of points that. First of all, I want to deal with the one where you were saying that the only thing that Elon cares about is money. I would say that when you look at his history and when he sold Zip2, he got about 20-30 million. Then he sold PayPal, he got about 140 million. And at some point he had about 160 million. And he literally, and this is, you can call conspiracy on everything. So I'm going to trust that you don't say it's a conspiracy. But basically he put in all of that money. He went broke. He was borrowing money. And many people say that when Tesla and SpaceX were nearly going bankrupt in 2008. So I would say it's probably not about the money for him. Although I do see your point. And I think for Elon, it's not about the money. For Elon, it's about greatness. For Elon, it's about being being the man of the of the solar system, being the human, being like just just like ego, like number one ego ever in the world. And
Being Tony
frankly,
Stark.
literally, and do you know that he actually has Iron Man outside of his office? You know,
Yes, I know.
Iron,
Yeah, yeah.
Iron Man suit. You know that too. You read this book? You
Yeah,
read,
yeah,
you read
yeah.
that book? I read the book. Yeah. So
Yeah.
look, I know. Look, Elon. Frankly, I still like him. I still like him. I genuinely don't care. I have no problem with egos. I have no problem with people trying to be the best person ever. I'm very much about freedom, and I think that his impact has been great. But so this is just one thing, and this again is very subjective. Nobody knows what Elon thinks. But the one thing where I think there's a fallacy in your arguments about billionaires, I think this is the most important point, is that you're saying that Elon doesn't want to give any of this money away. That's his morally wrong. Nearly all of his wealth, nearly all of it, is Tesla stock, right? And then there's more value to Tesla stock. There's actually a couple of points here. One, he might be wanting to hold Tesla stock because he believes it will increase. I believe it will increase. I believe Tesla will become a much, much greater company than it is today. It's already a massive company. I believe it will be by far the biggest company in the world one day. Maybe I'm wrong. So one reason could be the whole Warren Buffett argument I gave you. He might be waiting to have more money to contribute more. That's one argument. Another argument is the fact that if he was to sell any of that stock, he would dilute basically his the amount of shares he has in Tesla, and he would start losing control of Tesla. And I don't think there's anything wrong with him wanting to control the company that he really sacrificed a lot for. So just I'm not saying that you're wrong. I'm just giving you other reasons that he might be holding onto the stock. All the stuff with crypto, all the stuff with tweets. Yes, the results show that he probably made a lot of money on Bitcoin. Even Tesla made lots of money on Bitcoin, with Dogecoin also. But it's also, I don't think that's proof that he's money hungry. I think when you look at his history with PayPal, is to sacrificing 160 million into SpaceX and Tesla in 2008 when they nearly died. I think that means that he's probably not about the money. I think he is about the people, in my opinion. I could be wrong, but he's also very much about himself. And I think all this stuff that pisses you off about him and that pisses off a lot of people, I really think that's like the ego coming through. And I think at this point he doesn't care. Like I think he can be who he wants to be. And frankly, I don't have a problem with that. So that's kind of, what do you give an answer to that? What do you think of this?
I mean, a few things. So yeah, I disagree entirely. Respectfully, of course. I think your point was very well made. But I disagree entirely that he's off the people. When you're saying that, I actually think that's a great point you bring up about he doesn't want to lose majority control of Tesla, and thus he doesn't want to sell stock. Sell it anyway. Just sell it. Sell some of it. Sell one.
He is selling some right now. He's selling right now.
To be taxed on it, and I'm holding my breath. I'm holding my breath to see what actually comes of that. Okay, it's a fallacy for him to say that because I only own stock, you can't tax me on my salary. That's not what the corporate tax argument is about, and he knows that. That's a lie, and he's lying to appear like, well, I can't do anything. All I do is have stock. Corporate tax goes beyond what you have in your bank account, Elon, and you fucking know that, man. Come on. No, so yeah, we'll see what comes of that, and that's great. But still, sell it anyway, and give it. Like, you're not a man of the people. If of your 200 and whatever billion fortune, you've given less than 0.1%, he obviously doesn't care about anybody. And that extends outside his money, outside Tesla. He made many anti-COVID tweets. It's even COVID conspiratory tweets. That is antithetical to of the people. That's he, as you say, there are tons of Elon Andys, and they're going to listen to what he has to say about COVID. So spreading misinformation about something that has killed, over 5 million people is the opposite of being for the people. It's almost being against the people. And that's because, as you say, Elon has an ego. He likes to be the center of attention, and he'll say something inflammatory that is even potentially damaging to people just so he can garner that attention. He is an overt narcissist, I believe. I don't want to psychoanalyze him because I don't know anything about him, really.
He's probably a big narcissist, but I don't have a problem with that personally. But I agree.
I mean, I haven't met him. I haven't met him, so there's no way I can really say. I wouldn't even say that about Trump, even though obviously he is that way. But it's I don't want to jump to that. But And you're right. I don't know what he really thinks. And you may also be 100% correct, Philip, that he's waiting for a time where he can give more. But he has, in my opinion, done nothing to gain my trust that that is actually what he's going to do. But you know what, Philip? I will text you the day that I realize I'm wrong about this. And, I'll happily send him a tweet congratulating him, Because do you know what, Philip? In the end, I don't care about being right. I care about them using their money to help the world. That's what I care about. So I hope that if you're listening, Elon, I hope you prove me wrong, mate.
Yeah. Do you want to? I want to give you a choice. Just like we could keep going down this rabbit hole. I'm really enjoying this rabbit hole. But tell me, I have two options we can talk about. Do you want to talk about research, or do you want to for the last 30 minutes? We can talk about your research, or we can talk about why. Because I don't think we're finished on this. Why do you think that it's the responsibility of anybody to donate to anybody else? To be a good person, like whether this is a morality debate, because I'm very interested in this. I think I definitely have a different view than you, right? And I really enjoy talking to people who have different views than me, because it's kind of like something happens. I hate talking to people who have the exact same opinions. It's just kind of we repeat the same thing over and over again. So I think this is more educational, actually. So can we talk about morality? We can talk about your research next time.
Yeah, it sounds great.
Yeah. Okay, if we're on it, let's do it. So, okay, there's the evolutionary argument, which frankly we just kind of skimmed across. I think it's deeper. I think that the evolutionary argument is very complicated. I think we are competitive creatures. But aside from the evolutionary argument, give me your thesis as to why I'm a good person. If I give money to the homeless person, to a homeless person, does that make me a good person? Is it my responsibility to give money to a homeless person? I'm just wondering, what do you think about that?
Well, let's maybe take morality out of it. So, Jeff is Mr. Bezos is an American, I believe.
Yes.
So, America is a developed country, has been for a long time. It's developed initially from slavery, as many not colonization, but slavery. Most countries either had developed countries had slavery or colonization, or both. So Jeff Bezos, whether he realizes or not, has benefited from that disequilibrium of wealth from the Western world. And I mean, I hate the term Western world, but developed nation that has exploited underdeveloped nations that are still developing. So if I was in his position and I had benefited from living in America, being I'm half white, but being, a generally white individual that has made this huge empire, I would feel that the redistribution of my wealth and this system instilled by Ronald Reagan, where it's supposed to be trickle down and it just stays at the top, I would feel that I should redistribute this wealth to other nations from the perspective of saving the world. And it's interesting that you have this take on it, because right now, China and India are going through their industrial revolution long after we have already gone through ours. And as a result, they are two of the largest contributors to greenhouse gases. You cannot stop them from doing this because they have to do this to get to the point that we are getting to, which is sort of greener energy. But Bezos could actually use that money to supplement their industrial revolution, essentially accelerate it to the point where they become a green global power, and actually significantly reduce the amount of greenhouse gases that they're actually contributing to the environment. But that's not Bezos's plan. He'd rather put fucking factories in space. I mean, buddy, we'll all be dead by then. I really just don't see why you're not helping poor people get to our level and allowing them to develop their own green technology, and you're just going to fucking space. It's asinine. It's just stupid. So that's why taking even morality out of it, I think that there is an onus on him giving away his money?
Rationality, right? So I have a couple of points to that. Number one, you took up a subject that I'm scared to talk about, but it really triggers me, which is China. So do you believe Jeff Bezos has more money than China?
Almost certainly not. No,
Nowhere
China.
near. So if China, why is it Jeff Bezos' responsibility to go to China, one of the richest empires in the world, an unethical empire,
So is all of ours.
Well, but yeah, sure. You could say we are all unethical. I'm talking about right now. As of right now, okay. So what's worse, the U.S. What's happening in the U.S. or Uyghurs being put in concentration camps in China? Do you know much about that?
Yeah, of course, the Uyghur internment, obviously. I mean, I live with Chinese people, but Japanese internment camps not that long ago. The ICE and the children that were separated from their parents in the camps only a couple of years ago. America still does stuff like this. They're still doing this. Many nations across the world. We're focused on China and Uyghurs, but this kind of immoral segregation is everywhere. That doesn't justify it. Don't get me wrong. What's happening over there is ethnic cleansing, and it's awful. But that doesn't. We're now getting back into sort of, well, should he help a bad guy? I'm actually trying to exclude morality from it entirely. I'm saying that they are producing an insane amount of greenhouse gases because they're going through an industrial revolution. Give them the money to accelerate this and make this green, and you'll actually preserve the planet of which we all live on. You can't just wave your finger and tell them no. They've already shown that they won't listen to that. And frankly, I kind of understand why. We had the ability to do that, mainly because we colonized places like this. Britain colonized India, and as a result, they have always been catching up. And right now, they're going through what they need to get to a developed country, and we should help them get past this quicker so it doesn't ruin the earth for the rest of us. So, okay, China not a great guy. America not a great guy. India has its own problems too. They're led by, essentially a religious oligarchy at this stage. So, but that doesn't matter. We might all die before we work out these problems anyway. So yeah, I think Bezos should help them. I think Bezos should help Africa. I think Bezos should help absolutely everybody that needs it because he has hundreds of billions of dollars. Even if he lives to $1 million, he's probably never going to spend all the money he makes. So just fucking help people, regardless of what their country is doing. And use your money to help the Uyghur problem. Like get them all, out of there and find a nice little place for them and set up, some kind of area where they can thrive. Actually, if you're worried about that issue, help them.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I think I would say that you're probably underestimating the power of China to prevent that. Okay, so let's keep morality out of it. You're right. I think fuck morality in this conversation. Let's talk rationality, right? So let's talk. And by the way, this is even more complex because the rationality of saving the world is not necessarily everybody's agenda. So that also has to be taken into account. And there's the question of whether it should be someone's agenda or not, which is morality. So let's not go there. But I just want to debate you on the thing with China because China is far more richer than Jeff Bezos or Amazon. China is packed with companies like Tencent, Alibaba. What's the other one? There was the SoftBank. SoftBank might be Japanese. I actually think it is Chinese. But they funded the what's the basketball league? I can't believe NBL, American Basketball League. That's funded by China, right? So basically, China is even funding. You didn't know about that? You should really look into this.
No, I actually didn't know.
China's funding Africa. China is funding the development of Africa. I don't know if you knew about that using loans. So, okay, but let me hold it. Write it down. I started writing down my POIs, but basically, China is much richer than Jeff Bezos. I don't think it's Jeff Bezos' responsibility to do anything for China. If China wanted to go renewable, they would go renewable. And they are trying to go renewable. They're just not doing it quickly enough, right? But they have people not as rich as Jeff Bezos, but also very, very rich. So on this rationality point in terms of China, because let's just deal with China first, I don't think that makes sense. Do you see where I'm coming from? Like China is richer than Jeff.
I mean, you're making a premise that a country doesn't need help if they're richer than an individual. I mean, every country is going to be, maybe, but I think every country is going to be richer than Bezos. I don't think
not everyone.
Maybe not. Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. So, all right then. let's make this easier. Just help the countries that are poorer than Jeff Bezos. Really, my whole point was just to help a country that's producing greenhouse gases and to get them past that. You don't have to pick China. I agree. There's a lot of money in China. You can pick any other country. You can pick just, randomly point to a country in Africa, help them. It's not really necessarily about China. It's about helping people who need that help. That also helps us. So, like, I'll tell you this. One of the first things that we're going to see as a result of climate change is the emigration of over 1 billion people.
Of course,
and
we talked about this 2 years ago.
Yeah. So one thing that you see about where people don't want to divert money, that no one ever talks about the contribution of a country's wealth and reducing that, is to the military-industrial complex. As I see it, we're not diverting money to climate change. We're diverting money to deal with the issues that climate change is going to give us. And I think the one thing I'm starting to see more and more, particularly in a country like America, but this is all over the place, is that they are building this military infrastructure that will prevent this mass influx of climate change refugees.
For sure. I know this will happen.
So, do you not think it is a good idea for some of these billionaires to actually help the nations that are going to suffer from this, so that those people can stay and thrive in their own home nation? I mean, I have no problem with refugees, but I'm sure they would rather stay in an affluent country of their own rather than end up on American shores and get gunned down by this enormous military-industrial complex that is built primarily to protect a country that is consistently contributing to the crisis that we're all in. I think that is a better use for their money.
Of course, I could not agree more. I mean, like, I am the last person. Like my entire life is literally motivated by this, right? My entire life is to do something, like to fight climate change as much as we can, so that one day we can mitigate the consequence of this as much as possible. Well, I think you're making a mistake, which is funny. 2 years ago, you told me that I should not make this mistake, which is that you're generalizing. So I really think you're generalizing billionaires. I think you're taking them as a whole kind of a bucket, and basically you're saying that they're all wrong because they're all doing this. I think, for example, Elon, which is the one that you don't like the most, is actually the one example where I think his money will help those people more if it's kept. If it so means that if he keeps his wealth and that helps him control Tesla more, and let's say that money is invested back into Tesla, and I'm not lying to you, I genuinely think that will have a higher probability of helping those refugees if Tesla succeeds to the level that it can than if he could do anything else. Frankly, could you give me an idea of what could and should be done with, let's say, 10 billion? Let's say, like, Jeff Bezos actually has a climate change grant of 10 billion a year. I don't know if you knew that, but he has started a climate change grant, I think 1 or 2 years ago. He's put in 10 billion into climate change, and there's you can apply for this, right? We're planning to apply to get a bit of that funding as well. So, question is, okay, you got all the money. What do you solve? And frankly, Tom, I study this a lot. This is my full-time job, climate change fighting. We do research articles on climate change. I know quite well about all the different kind of ways that climate change is being caused, and finding solutions is bloody hard. What do you suggest?
Buses. Mm-hmm. So America has a massive
buses.
America has a massive issue with so I'm talking about America specifically now, has a massive issue with public transport infrastructure. This was because there was this massive drive to increase the motor industry and motor manufacturing industry in America, I think in the 50s. I might be wrong about that. Someone could correct me. So as a result, there are many people that are literally unable to get a bus to work. And as I'm sure you're aware, public transportation, many people in one vehicle, particularly new age, even hybrid buses, has an enormous impact on the amount of emissions a country will produce. Let's say 2 people in a bus compared to 2 people in a car, or sorry, 20 people in a bus compared to 20 people in 10 cars. So Elon Musk, with that amount of money, can implement a free bus infrastructure in America, which even if he can make it electric, that would even be better, which would vastly cut the amount of emissions that the motor industry creates in America. That is one that you could do in a year, off the bat. Second thing.
So I have a point for that one.
But second thing, isn't he trying to develop a prototype for a form of monorail in the States?
He doesn't do much on that. It's just an idea. I'm not a fan of the. I'm a critic of this project actually. So
yeah,
I don't agree with it at all.
because America and China started building, or had an idea to build a rail infrastructure at the same time. China has built now 70,000 miles of track. America has done nothing, not a single thing. And a big part of that is that the contract was essentially given to Elon Musk to develop this rail system that would increase the public transport infrastructure in the States and thereby reduce emissions. He has done nothing, not a single thing. Whereas China, like I said, has built 70,000 kilometers or miles of railway track. And we know very clearly that this kind of public infrastructure can vastly reduce emissions. So those are two things that he could do, and one of them he's actually purposefully stifling. So yeah, there you go.
What is he purposely stifling?
Well, he hasn't developed anything for it yet, and I think America. Now, I'm not entirely sure.
I mean, I just want to say against that one. I mean, like,
sure,
it's easy to criticize. It's hard to do this. I don't think this is easy. Like the what's it called, Hyperloop. Like he's barely working on the Hyperloop. You know, so my point would be like, you know, the man is already working on really a lot of things. So that would be one point. But I have a very interesting point for your buses. So do you know much about full self-driving?
No.
Okay, so this is rather than me just telling you here, I think I would really highly recommend, maybe we can talk on another podcast about this if we remember, the impact that full self-driving with electric Tesla vehicles will have on the problem that you're describing with buses is going to be even better than what you said with buses. And you know, I think I would like for you to just research it yourself rather than say what you know, just take my word for granted. But I think in terms of the bus is a great idea, by the way. But full self-driving with Teslas at scale will potentially solve all of transportation, all of it. I believe so. If you want to learn about it and tell me how I'm wrong, I would gladly hear it because I want to know when I'm wrong.
I can tell you now.
Yeah. Oh, great. Tell me.
Are they giving us these Teslas for free? Because the bus service would be.
Well, the thing is, they will be extremely cheap. Because
are they free? Are they free?
They will be basically cents on the. It'll be cheaper than an Uber. How cheap do you want it? Like, the employees still need to get paid. You know?
Yeah. Okay. If it's a free service that can run as efficiently,
but very cheaper than an Uber. So is an Uber too expensive? Like it will be basically like.
I mean,
if you have full self.
If you're a nurse on minimum wage or someone running two jobs, then absolutely an Uber is far more expensive than a bus. That's free. The whole point is that it's free infrastructure for people to get to their jobs. If he provides this completely free for everyone and everyone is using these electric cars, I don't know. I don't know the numbers. I'm sure you do. All electric cars versus actually no, because my point is that he could develop electric buses, so it still doesn't even counter the issue. I'm saying that
if the plan, though.
Well, if it is, and it's going to be free and it's going to replace all motor vehicles, great. That sounds awesome. But frankly, a much more achievable goal is to implement a free electric bus service for everyone in the States that allows them to get where they're going for free so that they can work and they can do it quickly. Some people need to travel 2-3 hours in buses just to get where they're going. It's impossible. They actually need to drive. So my point, okay, this system might work, and I will, Philip, for the benefit of this, I will look it up and see what I think of it. But unless it's free, I still don't think it's better than my idea.
Okay, so what if it's €10 for me to go from Barcelona, where I'm at now, to Berlin? Is that cheap enough?
Sure. Yeah. Let's say. Yeah.
Well, let's hope it happens. So, like, okay. So, by the way, so we're nearly finished today. I want to tell you, it's ironic. I think I get all your opinions. I get them, and I really see where you're coming from. And it's funny. I think that the one person I really think you're wrong on is Elon Musk. The one person I know he's a narcissist. I know he's a bit of an asshole. All of that I completely agree with. I still think that he is doing a lot for climate change, and maybe. Okay, maybe now it seems, oh, fucking expensive Teslas, only for the rich, yada, yada, yada. But this is like, when you look at the business plan of Tesla, they knew that this will happen, and they consistently try to make cheaper cars. Not because, and he said this, again, you can say that he's lying, but this is literally, he said in a video, it's not that he hates people who can't afford the cheapest Tesla. It's just that they really have not gone to the point yet where they can make the $25,000 Tesla. But this is a plan, and that is as cheap. I don't think it's possible for them to make the Tesla even cheaper. And the great thing is that when full self-driving robo taxis, and again, if it happens, if technologically they can get there, you'll be able to even rent out your Tesla, so that it works, and it works as an Uber for as cheap as the market allows for it, and helps other people to use it. So I think if that works, it'll be funny. Like I really think you're right in general with your consensus in a lot of cases, but Elon might be like a really kind of opposing example if it works out with Tesla.
Philip, I hope you're right. I hope you prove me wrong, and honestly, I truly hope for that.
Awesome. Well, I think this was a very interesting podcast. Next one that we do, we could definitely go deeper into tuberculosis and genetics, because it's an incredible topic. But thank you so much for giving me nearly 90 minutes of your time. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I really loved talking to someone who has different views. It was really, really a lot of fun for me and educational. So that's it, Tom. Been a pleasure, and we'll talk soon. Ciao.
Thank you so much. It's really good to be on here, and happy to do it again. Yeah, thank you.
All right. See you, Tom.